don't really have a general topic today, so we're going to kind of just talk about whatever we feel like talking about, because, you know, we can do that. It's our show.
Yes.
So
for the last, well, 12 years, yeah.
So welcome to the show. This is a call-in show. We are live, and we are here if you want to comment on anything you see or hear. If you'd like to call in, the number will be on your screen in a moment. The number is.
All
right. Well, it'll be up there in a few minutes. But please, there it is. It's 717-846-5067. We'd love to talk to you. So please feel free to join us.
Yeah, questions or comments, whatever you'd like. And like I said, we're here to both ask you questions and also to answer any inquiries that you may make.
I'll go ahead while we're waiting for somebody to call in. Why don't we cover some things that have been in the news recently? My first story I have to talk about is a shocking as it may be. Another pastor has been caught abusing his position to sexually assault women. This associate pastor at a Norwalk church he's being held on a $2 million bail after he was arrested on suspicion of sexually assaulting female parishioners in the Los Angeles County. His name was Jorge Juan Castro. He had
Castro?
Yeah, Castro. He was arrested.
You mean a Castro like that guy that kidnapped the three women and held them captive?
Yeah, it must be the name. No, I don't know. But he has 6 felony charges of rape, oral copulation, and penetration by a foreign object. Essentially, what he would do is, as these women would come in for counseling, he would perform certain acts with them in the name of God. Of course, this took place at both the church and the victims' homes. You know, I think one of the most disturbing part about this story is, and this is something that happens very often in the church, that the pastor is looked at as a qualified counselor. And don't get me wrong, counselors can abuse their position too. But more often than not, churches don't really have any serious formal training, or at least any science or evidence-based training for counseling, and so people will go to pastors and for support, and when they usually lack the required training to support them. But not only that, you know, of course, the church itself, using the church as an authority is frequently a way that pastors take the opportunity to
abuse their power.
Abuse their power, exactly. Yeah. And so it's very it's not only disappointing and disturbing and infuriating, but then again, it's not an isolated example. You know, it happens all the time and far too frequently.
And but the thing is that, yes, the pastors and the priests and everyone else, when push comes to shove, they're still all part of society in general. Nothing, gives them special power, special immunity from temptation, or anything like that. They have the same human frailties that we all do. It's just that I can resist. And they figure because they're in such a position of authority that they don't have to resist temptation.
Right.
The church and their religion will protect them. And what's more is that, well, who's going to believe their victims?
Right, because priests are above. I mean, they're the paragons of morality.
Yeah, above reproach.
Well, it's not only that, but I mean, if you actually look at the Christian religion, and of course we've talked about things like this before, but if you look at the church and you look at the concept of redemption, the concept of vicarious redemption, where you don't necessarily have to be responsible for your own actions, because that responsibility will get transferred to Jesus if you just pray hard enough. If you believe enough and you pray hard enough, it's okay to sin, and Jesus will forgive almost anything. So it allows you to escape a certain level of moral responsibility for your actions, and it's something that I think is actually fairly immoral. The idea that you can just dodge that responsibility for what you do.
Well, I think that probably the biggest misconception that people have, especially like the Christian religion, that all they have to do to be forgiven and go to heaven is just accept Jesus Christ as their personal Savior and say that they're sorry.
Exactly.
And that's the big print. That's the headlines there. But no one ever bothers to read the fine print that's in there. And it's, according to the Bible, it's a lot more complicated than that. When you're laying on your deathbed and you say, "Oh God, I'm sorry for killing those, 13 people in the mall, and raping that 38 women and everything. Take me into heaven."
Right.
You're going to be in the same position as someone who didn't repent, if the whole repentance and God thing is true.
Right. One of the going back to the church, one of the things that Pope Francis, the latest pope for the Catholic Church, has actually said a few things that some atheists are frankly conflicted about. He's talked about trying to open up the church more to the idea of, for example, now this of course is from a Catholic point of view, but that atheists, if they do perhaps, and it's very kind of nebulous,
Yep.
but if atheists, it's possible for atheists to be forgiven, even without necessarily accepting Jesus or the church, as long as they're doing good works, which is it's an interesting position to take, and it's kind of, there's mixed messages coming out from the church about what that means, and it kind of makes some atheists feel conflicted, because but from the standpoint where atheists are concerned is that we don't feel we need any kind of vicarious redemption or forgiveness or anything like that. We try to take personal responsibility for our actions, so that's kind of meaningless to us. But it is kind of an opening step, and it's something that some atheists are looking at and saying, maybe the church is kind of loosening its stance on things. But of course, 2 steps forward, 1 steps back, because I have a story here. The Pope did say something recently about the Catholic Church. Maybe perhaps.
Doug, you have a phone call?
It seems we have a caller. Go ahead and put our caller through.
Hello.
Hi, caller. Can I get your name, please?
Yeah, this is Carl.
Hi, Carl.
Yeah, so anyhow, the point is, the question I have for you guys, or the comment I have on Pope Francis, is that he simply setting up the Catholic Church to eventually grant an okay to gay marriage. He can see
I
the way
agree.
the wind's blowing, and so therefore That's all he's doing. He's just trying to start them on the path so that 50 years from now they can say, oh, we always thought gay marriage was okay.
Yeah, and that's funny because that actually leads right into the next story I was going to talk about and what I was leading into. Yeah, he's been putting out statements that kind of signal that is what's going to happen. But literally 2 days after that came out, there's a priest named Greg Reynolds who has been supporting the church changing their position on gay marriage and women priests. And 2 days after that story came out, he was, of course, this would be an opportunity for the church to say, yeah, that is a good idea. Why not promote that? But 2 days later, he was excommunicated and defrocked.
Yeah, well, of course.
so-
They're not ready to do that yet. It takes them 500 years to say Galileo was okay. So anyhow, what I want you guys to do is talk about the overriding theme of the Pennsylvania Atheist Humanist Conference, which was that it's time to start promoting separation of state and church, where the religious bias that's been implemented in our laws by a bunch of theocrats. 25% of the population has been pounding Congress to pass laws, including one that's on the books that's going to let churches ignore buying insurance for their buildings because the taxpayers will pay to repair them.
Yeah.
And additionally, the kids that have died because of religious daycare centers are exempt from state laws. The way that pastors are allowed to get a tax-free housing allowance and then still claim mortgage deductions on that money, and whole bunches of other stuff. And all this stuff was brought up at the conference, and I think some of that's a lot more important than what our standard fare is on this show. So, hey, go for it. Thanks.
Thank you, Carl. Yeah, no. Carl brings up an excellent point. I mentioned it on the last show we had. We had a state conference we put together, and we brought in a lot of wonderful speakers. And the church-state separation was a very strong message that we were sending. And one of the things that's very important is that we stand against this pressured tide has been and continues to infect our government with religious morality when it should be a secular standpoint that allows for the people to make their own decisions of conscience.
Yes.
And decide who, churches don't need us to support them as a whole. They should be supporting themselves, just like everybody else. Every other organization, every other individual is expected in society to pay taxes, to provide for the general welfare of the people in this country, police, bridges, roads, things like that. And no matter how you feel about the way our taxes are or anything like that, there is always going to be some sort of taxing, and everybody should be pulling their part for that. Religions should not get a pass, and they do frequently, more often than not. There is there's a form that nonprofits have to fill out called a 990, and what that does is that tells the public, not just the government, but the public, because this is public information, exactly how nonprofits receive support from the government by not having to pay taxes. They, some don't have to pay taxes and and get some support. And because we get that support, we're required to be responsible in telling the public exactly how we're spending the money we get. And every nonprofit, Pennsylvania Nonbelievers has to do this. Every nonprofit has to file this and tell the government exactly how our money is being distributed. Churches don't. Churches can file as a church, and as long as they have a particular creed that they can spout, and there's a few other things, as long as they call themselves a church, they get a free pass, and they don't have to report money. And this is how mega churches get away with making so much money. I mean, it's a public scam, and it needs to be stopped. And when we're looking at the government and how it and how tight money is for particular things that need to be addressed, and how we need to balance the budget and all this other stuff. When we're looking at that, and we don't look at things like taxing people who aren't paying taxes, then it seems to run directly counter to what we as a society should be allowing.
Well, you see, the biggest excuse that the churches make for not paying taxes is charity. Oh, they have soup kitchens, and they're donating so much of their money toward helping the poor that they shouldn't have to. It's like paying taxes, except that they're helping everyone. And if you audit their books, they really don't contribute that much.
Small church. It's easy for a small organization to file a 990 and make people aware of where the money is going. Larger organizations, it becomes a little bit more complicated. But you know what? If you're taking in that kind of money, you already have those administrative costs. It's not that big of a deal to do your part and make sure that everybody knows exactly that you are doing things above board. The only reason to not file a 990 is because you don't want to tell everybody where your money is going, and that everybody should be looking at. It doesn't matter if you are religious or not. You should be looking at that and saying, wait a second, I'm giving money to that church, and I don't know where that money is going. I want to know about that. I want to be able to decide if, a churchgoer should be saying, I want to be able to decide if I'm going to go to a church, that I can look at their books and I can say exactly where my money is going. More often than not, money that goes into a church goes to the upkeep of the church, and volunteers are the ones that provide the support, the charity, and all that other stuff. It's not the church that's providing that money. The money goes into the church, goes to pay the church's expenses, and that's it. It's the people, the individuals, that put in their time and efforts to raise money. When the church wants to support something, they don't say, oh, we're going to write a check out of our coffers. No, what they do is they go to their congregation and say, we want to raise money for X, and the congregation then forks over the money.
Yeah.
Which
is, that's free labor. Yeah.
And they should be required to account for that. There is a couple lawsuits going on right now to try and address that inequity, and I'm hoping to see some movement forward on that. In the past, we talked about also there of course is a prohibition for churches to endorse candidates and get involved with politicking.
That isn't always observed.
The last election cycle, there was a group of I think it was like 4,000 or 5,000 churches that signed on to this declaration saying, we're going to flagrantly violate the IRS's rules. And it was brought up by Amanda Knief, who is what is her current title? She's one of the managing, I think it's managing director at the at American Atheists, but she's also has a lot of background in lobbying and getting involved in government. And she went to a town hall meeting that Obama had to ask the question about what do what are you going to do about these kinds of violations, and are you going to try to get the churches to go in line? And Obama essentially said, we have no plans to address anything like this. And she pressured, she pushed the question, and until she got essentially that answer. And it's very disappointing that it's such a hot potato. I mean, this isn't anything radical to say the churches should be doing their fair share. You know, they shouldn't be allowed to skate the rules just because we promised we'll do charity. You know, that's not right. You need to be accountable. I mean, that just seems like.
Yeah, but accountability especially in Washington is in very short supply. You know, there's no such thing really as transparency. No one is accountable for anything. No one ever says that they lie. They misspoke. You know, even if they're caught there, you know, literally with their pants down, I misspoke.
Speaking of pants down.
Sorry.
No. Well, you know, we have a desk here. It's okay.
Yeah.
There was a priest in Pennsylvania, in Scranton area, who was a Catholic priest caught. Well, he was charged with molesting a 15-year-old boy after cops found him and the boy was not wearing pants.
It's a dead giveaway.
It is a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
The preacher, Father Jeffrey Polish, told cops that he was working on his homily on campus.
Yeah, homily?
When he met the boy who was in emotional distress and needed counseling. Then he later admitted that he met the boy through the casual encounters section of Craigslist.
I imagine if kid didn't need counseling before, he probably does now. So.
Yeah, it's a tragedy, and you know, I make a little light of it, and I do that because otherwise I'd be screaming. But it is very disturbing.
Those people that you least think are going to, commit these crimes, these offenses, the people that do, and usually it's the people that cry the loudest that are responsible for it.
Right. Now, I guess we can move on. That's all the news I have for right now. Do you want to move on to the Ask an Atheist stuff, or?
Yes. If Control Room would kindly put up the Ask an Atheist's email up on the screen right now. You've just got the phone number, which you can call in and ask us face to face.
There we go.
There we go. It's an Ask an Atheist PAN at gmail.com. That's the whole thing. And what we do is we will check that particular email account for any questions that you may have regarding atheism, religion, way we feel, way we view things. And we'd be only too pleased to either get back to you by email, or we can read it on the air. We will not mention your name or your email address unless you specifically ask us to do to do so. So, we're not going to blab who you are, regardless of what position that you may have. As we were getting started with doing this, what we did is we polled a few of our members, and we asked them, what questions have you been asked? And give it to us to sort of to prime the pump as it were. And I'm going to read off just a couple that had been submitted to us as atheists by religious people. We'll ask you, Brian, it says, I've heard some atheists say they don't believe in God, while others say they don't believe God exists. What's the difference?
Well, I would say it depends on whether the person asking the question actually says they're an atheist or not. If they say they're an atheist, there's probably no functional difference between the two. It's very common for people to say, I don't believe in God, because other people say, I believe in God, and it's a very quick negative to reverse it. But the more clarifying statement is to say, I don't believe God exists. But, you know, some people who maybe consider themselves agnostic or maybe don't follow Christian dogma may say something like, I don't believe in God, implying that they might believe that some sort of God exists, or some and maybe they don't believe in the creed that God provides. But for the most part, there's really no difference between the two. Yeah. Most atheists will just say, I don't believe in God, as kind of shorthand for saying, I don't believe God exists.
But, you know, the word God is kind of a generic term that's more or less been hijacked, as it were, by the Judeo-Christian religion.
It's very funny that you mention that, because up until the invention of monotheism, I mean, obviously there was the idea of multiple gods with different names. But at some point, when monotheists got the idea, well, if there is one God, it's God, and that is the name of the God. And they call that's just a way of asserting the dominance of Christianity. There has been some legal theory that God, it can be a generic term to apply to the gods of many different religions. Yeah. And while there's some validity to the idea that God could be a generic term, it's interesting that the only religion that uses the English word God is Christianity. Yeah. And Judeo-Christianity, Jewish and Christian religions. Muslims use the word Allah. There are plenty of other religions that use other words, but the Jews and the Christians will use God as the generic term, and nobody else does. So the idea that it is a catch-all word for a God is specious at best. And I think that that is one idea, that it's one way that Christians have seen to try to use government as the mouthpiece for their religion, to co-opt what they call ceremonial deism, the idea that we have certain effects of state where it's a good idea to refer to a creator. If we're going to refer to a creator, we might as well call him God, because God is a generic term for any God. And it's a manipulation, I mean, in the end.
It kind of reminds me of a short story. We used to have a preacher, a reverend, that used to come around and preach to us at the York Mother's Day fair celebration. And he would condemn us to hell and tell us all about Jesus and everything. And one comment always sort of stuck with me, because we were actually sitting next to a booth where there was some Muslims there, and they had a couple of Qurans sitting on their table, and he then went right next to him and he started saying, oh yes, well, in our religion we don't spell God's name with an A. for Allah, you know, and it just kind of tickled me. Well, you know, Allah is really just means God.
Right.
And it's just a different way of spelling it.
Right, but but then the question, I mean, you know, there's no question that typically people of the Islamic faith view God differently than Christians view God, who view God differently than the Jews view God. I mean, I would say that the Islamic view of God is probably closer to the Jewish view of God than the Christian view of God, but they're not identical. So when you say God and you mean a supernatural creator of the universe, well, yeah, the word means that, okay? But when you talk about, well, what does it mean to be that God? What kind of views does that God have? How are you supposed to worship that God? What is the framework that God exists in? They are very different things.
Yeah. Does the God that you believe in have mass? Is it a corporeal entity? Is it just, like they say in science fiction movies, just pure energy?
Is it a personal God? Does it have a direct effect on your life? Does
he know you exist?
Yeah. What is his relationship with his prophets? In Christianity, Jesus is a human and a God, and all of those other things all combined into one. But that doesn't mean, you know, that the Jews view him that way, or that Muslims view him that way. So even when you're talking about the Judeo-Christian and Muslim religions, there is a lot of difference of opinion on what it means to be God.
Yeah.
And so to just lump them all together and call them God, well, it's a trick of the language. Yeah, you can say that, but it doesn't really mean that they're the same thing, and that, or that they're worshipped differently, or that when Steve on the street says, I believe in God, it means the same thing as someone else who says, I believe in God. And so to lump them all together is a way to unify religious believers and to isolate people who don't believe in religion.
Oh, very much isolate those people. Yeah, I mean, that makes you an atheist.
Right. Well, and you know, in Greek society, they're the ones that coined the term ostracize, and the idea of othering people who don't fit in the societal mold, and sending them away from the community. And this is just a modern version of ostracizing people who don't believe the same as the way the majority wants to believe, and to turn those ideas into alien ideas. And that, you know, we call ourselves the Free Thought Forum here because we are free thinkers, and that means we have the ability and the will to make up our own minds about the universe around us.
I mean, we're not restricted by someone telling us that we're not allowed to think or to question what we are told, or what we may read in the Bible, or any other scripture for that matter.
Exactly.
We have an open mind, and we like to speak it.
Well, I'm going to remind everybody, this is a call-in program. The number is on your screen. It's 717-846-5067. We are an open conversation, and you know, we'd love to have you join us here. If not, I guess we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah. Okay. How do you deal with your idea that when you die, there is nothing else? Isn't that depressing? But let me answer it first. For me, I try to enjoy life every single day. I'm a natural joker like that, and I don't worry about what is going to happen when I die. As someone once told me, I'm going nowhere when I die. So it's not depressing to me that I'm not going anywhere, but even still, even if I was going to go someplace like that, it isn't necessarily good or bad, or heaven or hell.
I have two responses I usually give to this, along with the one that you just gave. You know, I like to enjoy the life I have, and I concern myself with that. But I also, my first question, it depends on how I feel that day. But the first thing I might say is, well, I feel exactly the same way I felt before I was born. Mm-hmm. I wasn't here before I was born. There were other people here. I'm not going to be here after I die. There will be other people here, and I will play the part I play in the portion in which I live in this universe. Mm-hmm. And that is what it is. I mean, I can't change it. I can't. But the other thing I want to point out about this particular question, and this happens a lot, is it's a loaded question. And the reason why it's a loaded question is because it presumes, by the question itself, that we could choose to make the universe whatever we would wish it to be just by wishing for an afterlife. If I say, well, I want to believe in an afterlife, that doesn't change the idea of whether there's an afterlife or not. And for me, I find it more important to embrace what we understand to be reality,
the here and now,
and work with that concept of reality rather than embrace a fiction. I like truth. I like what's real, and I want to know what's real, and I'm very interested in understanding that. But the question itself precludes that. It decides, well, I can decide, and you know, this goes back to, well, you know, somebody asks, well, what if you're wrong? Why don't you believe in God to just to escape the possibility of hell? Well, I can no more choose to believe in God, knowing what I know about the nature of the universe, than I can choose to not believe in gravity, or to believe it's not raining when it's wet outside. You know, the nature of reality is truth on its face, and if I choose to embrace that lie, then I feed myself into this fiction, and I can't make good decisions about my life. If I think that there's an afterlife, then I can't decide. It naturally leads into wishing to.
There's a call coming in.
Excellent. Go ahead and put them through.
Hello, caller.
Hey, Ryan.
What is your question? Or
Can I get your name, please?
Well, one thing I wanted to add to something you were just talking about, the idea of people asking, what do you think you're going with after you die? Because I've been asked that question too. And I've actually told them straight up that the idea of heaven never really appealed to me.
me either.
Me either.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I mean, think about it for a minute. You've got a particular, rather strict set of what it means to be godlike, and you're told that you're going to spend your entire afterlife worshiping a entity, doing whatever that entity wants. I mean, it's for eternity. And enjoy it, and you'll like it. And
You will like it, yeah.
You will like it. And I you know, that doesn't seem to be enjoyable. You know, there's a lot of people, you know, there's all kinds of jokes out there about, you know, yeah, go to hell. I'd rather go to hell and listen to all the fantastic musicians and the wonderful people that are theoretically going to end up there.
As Aaron loves to compare it to like being trapped forever with Anthony Fremont, the creepy kid from the Twilight Zone.
Yes.
Or Stepford, or
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it really, when you look right at it, it is a form of eternal slavery. To get into heaven, you kind of have to be a slave to what they say are God's wishes, God's commands and everything. So you have to walk the straight and narrow during your life, and if you fulfill that task, well, then you'll go to heaven, where you will be allowed the privilege of worshiping God for all of eternity. And like you said, well,
It was really, even when I was a believer, it was a thought that never appealed to me.
no, well, I mean, but if you made it to heaven, you know, you meet all the conditions, that are there. And then you get up there, and this is going to be eternity. That's a fairly long time. I mean, that's longer than a fortnight. Let's just say after 200 years, you get kind of sick of it, and you don't want to do it anymore. Now, is God going to say, "Oh no, you didn't meet the contract. You can't. You'll be happy for eternity. Now I'm going to send you to hell"? I mean, could God do that just because you've made it to hell? I mean, made it to heaven. Does that mean that you're guaranteed that you're going to stay there forever and you have to be a slave?
And then the only possibility, I mean, the only way that you could conceivably come up with a heaven where it met all the conditions that you provided in the Bible would be to eliminate free will. At that point, you would have to make everybody feel happy, and when you lose your individual agency for eternity, well, how is that something that somebody would find pleasure in?
Yeah, and I think somebody else once put it this way: is like, well, if you're made to enjoy it, then it's not really you that's up there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the tack I take to that personal question, is just like get them to think about what the afterlife scenarios actually mean, and that helps me to explain to them, hey, these concepts don't comfort me, they don't scare me. I'm more comfortable with the fact that I'm just going to die.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's all I got.
Oh, thank you for calling.
Yes, thank you. If you ask any group of people, what do you think that God is like, or looks like? Just to describe God. Well, we've got a photo of God, a couple of photos of God, and throw it up on the screen. The first photo of God. There you go. Now you throw up the second photo. Now you see, so in the lower right-hand corner. Well, what we found out was, you've heard the expression, Jesus H. Christ. Well, we found that H was actually the family name. The family name was Higgs, Higgs, and Christ is an honorary title. And what you see up there are some pictures, although it's hard to tell, of a thing they call the Higgs boson, which is something that was predicted 100 years ago, but no one has been able to no one has been able to prove or to see. Now, throw up the next picture there, if you would. Okay, this is just one of the sensors of the big CERN.
Large Hadron Collider.
The Large Hadron Collider that they have, that's partly in France and Switzerland. It's like a 17-mile circle where what they do is, to get a little science content, they accelerate protons around at near relativistic speeds, approaching the speed of light, until they will collide into one another. And what they see coming off from this explosion are all the particles, the exotic particles that are generated because of it. Okay, they've been looking for this forever. Well, it seems. But what the Higgs boson does, it actually contributes to mass. We've always wondered, what it is in the quantum universe that makes mass. Well, without going into technical explanation, this Higgs boson is what helps provide the mass for these particles. And this is a reaction. Show the next photo. This is the reaction that we got. Someone took a picture there of God. He's calling his patent attorney. Sorry. Okay, you take it off the screen.
So yeah,
we're joking around, but the Higgs boson is nicknamed the God particle.
now I want to say that Peter Higgs, who predicted was one of the people who predicted the particle itself, and it's named after him. Doesn't like the name God particle, and the reason why is essentially what happened is some members of the media kind of latched on to this concept and said, this is what it means to I mean, this is so important. They were trying to emphasize how important this particle was to understanding the nature of the universe. But of course, as the media are wont to do, that name has latched on to give the idea that this provides evidence for God. Of course, it does not. It just provides evidence that we are smart enough to try and figure out what the actual universe is made up of.
Yeah.
And as a species, and that is actually, more, to me, more inspiring and more fills me with more awe and more appreciation for the beauty of what we understand the universe to be than any God ever could. When I look at the universe and I look how complex it is, and then you look at how when you get a glimpse behind the curtain,
Yes.
as to how it works and the majesty of how it's come together. I mean, it is inspiring to look at that.
But if you're clouded by creationism and religion, it's like looking at something through smoked glass, and you never really see the full picture. You maybe will get a little bit of an outline of it. But I have books at home on particle physics, and I'll tell you, to me, I'll open up my books and I will look at some of the pictures there, and all I can say is it's scientific porn to me. I look at it and it's like, this is so fantastic. This is better than anything that I could have imagined.
Do you know what was inspiring to me? A couple years ago, I was at the Grand Canyon, and on one of the Hualapai Indian Reservation, they have a walkway that goes out over the canyon. And it's
I
made
see
of
a
glass.
picture of that. Yeah.
I was there. I went out and I walked down
Is
the
it a
glass.
little nerve-wracking? I mean, do you get the?
It's a little nerve-wracking, but I went out there, and it had been I think the second time I'd been to the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
But you go out there and you look over the edge, and it's one thing to look at the canyon and appreciate its beauty with the colored stripes and the river below and all the scrub brush and all of that, and to take it in and say, this is a beautiful view. That's one level of appreciating the Grand Canyon. But when you look at it and you figure there is millions of years of history that you're seeing compressed into one scene, and
That's
to
right.
grasp the enormity of time that went into generating that vista.
Every little layer of sediment
Right.
That's there. I mean, it's years, sometimes centuries, compressed into something that's an eighth of an inch high.
Well, and if you understand what sediment is essentially layers of, usually it happens on the floor of an ocean where shells and other animals get compressed on top of each other over and over and over, and that's called sedimentary rock. And it's formed over millions of years of compressing that rock into these, very narrow layers. And so at some point, I forget what the exact time is because I'm not a geologist, but I think it was a couple 100 million years ago. At some point, that area of the country was open ocean. You know, there was a large interior waterway that went through there.
Well, so it also goes in with your plate tectonics and the movement of the continent.
Exactly. But there was open ocean there, and that's when those layers compressed. Then, you know, the layer of water dropped. The Great Plains opened up, and there was a large body of water just north of where the Grand Canyon was. And when I say water, a large body, I'm talking a huge sea, this inner sea. And then at some point, a dam broke, a natural dam broke, and it released this seaway down through the Grand Canyon. And over a few million years, this sea emptied, and that action of emptying the sea cut into this rock. Over a couple million years to make that formation. And so when you get down to the bottom and you realize, well, that's what's left of this huge interior seaway that cut into it to give us this view of history, that is awe-inspiring.
Just like slicing through a piece of cake.
Yeah.
You know, it's, they attribute, or many scientists attribute, Noah's flood to a similar sort of thing happening at the Black Sea, where a part of the edge of the Black Sea sort of broke away like a dam breaking, and the Black Sea partially just drained out. And of course, back then, people didn't know what thousands of miles were. It was their immediate vicinity was flooded, that was underwater, so it doesn't take much imagination to see why they think that the world was flooded.
And of course, you know, sometimes creationists will say something like, well, there are flood myths around the world. Sure, there are floods that happen around the world. I mean, floods are a frequent fixture of an Earth that has, 70 some odd % of the surface covered with water. You'd think there's going to be a few floods every now and then.
Yeah. Especially when it rains.
And with plate tectonics and the other features that shift around our landscape, there are times when that water that was once trapped has to release itself, or will gather and break free, and this will cause massive flooding and destruction. And of course, people who don't understand what it is they're looking at
immediately attribute the thing to some supernatural.
Right.
I think now throw up the first photo there, if you would. Put it up to full screen if you can. Now, can you imagine back, 10,000 years ago, someone seeing lightning, hearing the boom, booms? Throw a second one like that. You see atmospheric disturbances like this. Put up a third one like that. I mean, this is almost spectacular. Well, back then, man knew that he couldn't do anything like that. He couldn't shout as loud as thunder. So it must be something supernatural. Yeah, why don't you throw up the last one? Yeah. I mean, this is amazing. I mean, anyone that's ever been out in a violent thunderstorm, of course, we know that we are, this is nature, this is weather that we're looking at. But if you were a person with no education, didn't even know what science was, probably didn't even have a full language yet, you'd got to think to yourself, oh, this is some angry, powerful being. I don't know if the word God, when it actually came into being, but that they knew something was there. Okay, you can take that one down.
There's this idea that gets tossed around a lot. If there were a creator, and we don't believe that there was one, but if there were a creator, God would. There's some people that view God as the omniscient, omnipotent, supernatural being, and then there are others that would, I think some of the more ancient peoples probably thought it was the creator being was a being that was very similar to them, that is flawed and had its own instances of rage and other things where it would be perfectly natural for that kind of being to be more paternalistic as a just a greater being than them, but not necessarily all of the things we attribute to a modern god. But it's funny, you had the pictures of the lightning, but if you go out on YouTube, we've figured out what causes lightning. We know that the difference in potential between the ground and the clouds, when there is a great gathering of clouds and the transfer of electricity between them, that causes the lightning, and then the displacement of air when that air is superheated into plasma, which causes the light, expands. And then once the potential is exhausted, the air collapses in on itself, and that causes the thunder. And
it collapses and expands at greater than the speed of sound.
Right, which causes a shock wave, which then projects the thunder out at the speed of sound in whatever the temperature and pressure of the particular area it happens is. But what's funny is we now know what causes it, and if you've ever seen a giant Tesla coil fire, it is an interesting sight. But what I suggest is if you go out on YouTube, you can actually look up. People have tuned the harmonic frequencies of the electrical generation to generate songs.
Yes.
Music by
songs of the spheres.
Yeah, I've heard some fantastic. So they've tuned the harmonic resonance of the electricity to generate different frequencies that correspond to notes, and they can actually play music on these Tesla coils. And it's just a fantastic thing to watch. If you ever get a chance to see it, go out to YouTube and look it up. I'm sure you can find it out there. But
if you go outside and you look at lightning, we're talking cloud to ground lightning. I mean, you'd swear up and down on a stack of Bibles or whatever, Books of Mormon, that lightning comes from the clouds, goes down and into the ground. And it's only our technology and high-speed photography and everything that we learn that is not the case most of the time, that you get lightning will start down and then lightning will come up from the ground and meet it. Then you get they call a return blast. But I mean, we'd have never guessed that 100 years ago.
Well, we've got about a minute left of the program. I want to mention that we will be at the Lebanon Craft Fair this coming Saturday, if you want to come out and meet us. In 2 weeks after that, the second Saturday and Sunday in October, we will be at the NOLA Pumpkin Fest. We will be tabling at both of those events, and if you'd like to come out and talk to us, you can ask us questions there, or you can send us an email to our email address. Our next show will be on the second Tuesday in October. It should be right.
The 8th,
it's the 8th. It's right there up on the screen. And then, so please check us out. You can send us emails with your questions or call in at any time, and we'd love to hear from you. So thank you for tuning in. As I said, I've been Brian Fields, and this is Doug Diggens. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks, and have a great night, everybody. And